From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Glad you are with us. We are talking about a new organization in Middle Tennessee that is designed to help the LGBTQ community. And so we're just going to be introduced to this organization. What are they all about? How do they form? And what are their goals? What's their mission? We're happy to have with us the founder, the president, I guess, of Inclusion Tennessee, Phil Cobucci. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so what is Inclusion Tennessee?
So Inclusion Tennessee is a brand new organization. We formed after 3.5 years of deep research of the LGBTQ plus community here in Middle Tennessee to really get an understanding of what our community needed in order to thrive. And so our purpose and our mission is to connect people to resources, programming, and service that enhances the lives of our multifaceted LGBTQ plus community here in Middle Tennessee and eventually throughout the entire state.
So how big, let's do a 101 here. How big is the LGBTQ community in Middle Tennessee right now, and how much has it grown in the last, say, 5 years?
So there's actually really not hard data on what our community size is. There has been some surveys, there has been some questions taken from different elements of the census and whatnot, but we actually don't have hard physical data that says there are X number of LGBTQI plus identified folks here in Middle Tennessee. What we do know is that there are certain percentages that would say that they identify as a member of that community, that we can say that between 5 to 7% identify within urban centers, 3 to 5% identify within suburban centers, and so based on that data and based on the data that we have from collective research, we can say that there's probably about 100,000 to 125,000 within the Middle Tennessee region that identifies somewhere within that spectrum.
And is that growing?
And it is growing, absolutely.
And are we, compare us to other cities across the country. Are we a city that is growing fast? Are we a city that people, based on some of the politics of our state, would say, no, I don't want to go there? Or are we growing, not growing, fast? What would you say?
I think that's hard to say. I mean, we continue to see growth in some of our largest events. Nashville Pride, for example, continues to see growth year over year over year. The attendance of some of our larger community events, community organizations continue to see greater engagement. But I think what we don't necessarily see is who specifically identifies as part of that community and whether or not they're going to identify and say that they're going to fully come out and be counted.
Right. So why do you think an organization like this is needed? Why is this needed right now? We
continue to hear of there's a multitude of reasons, truthfully. I mean, our research from the very beginning of this work started in 2019. And when we did this, the first round of research was done in partnership with Nashville Pride. And we studied the community here in Middle Tennessee. We wanted to ask the question of what do people need to thrive? Right? And we heard every answer that you could imagine. Everything from we needed a safe and sober space that was not associated with nightlife, coffee shop, to I needed to find a doctor that was affirming and accepting of me in my full identity, to I wanted to find a faith community that was accepting of me as well. Right, and so it runs the full gamut. What we were able to identify once we were able to filter down all of the data from the 2,500 people that we spoke with was that there's a specific need within 5 different arenas where there are organizations. While we have 35, 40 organizations that do work here in the community, there's 5 specific areas that were not necessarily touched. And that's where we're stepping in with our organization to address those specific needs.
How accepting of a community would you say Nashville, Middle Tennessee is? How accepting of a community is it?
I think Nashville, as the urban core, Nashville itself, Davidson County, has a very accepting sense to it. And there's a strong community here. But the reality is that even in parts of Davidson County, there are people who do not feel like they belong or that they feel welcome. And then you continue to move out into further parts of Middle Tennessee and hit some of these other counties around the area, and there are people who do not feel comfortable coming out of their homes publicly. They do not feel comfortable wearing a pride shirt or even identifying that they are a member of the community in any way. And so I think it's really important that we are aware of that, and that we talk about how we can continue to build spaces of belonging where people feel like they, members of our community can feel like they actually have a place, and that there's a place for them.
You said, you mentioned some places. You said a coffee shop, a healthcare, a church.
Yeah.
And so if you were to pick, one area that you want to focus on first. I mean, you're a new organization.
Yep.
What is the first thing you would try and initiate, let's say in Nashville? And then I bet that the challenges are different and perhaps greater once you get further outside of Nashville.
Absolutely.
But what about in Nashville and then once you get outside?
So one of our 5 initiatives that we are focused on initially is to actually build a community center here in Nashville. And there are models, 220 different models around the country that we can learn from. And there has been previous iterations of community centers here in Nashville itself. And so we are taking what we have learned from past iterations of community centers, and we are taking what we have learned from sister cities and larger cities around the country, and we are applying those learnings to create something here in Nashville that not only creates a space of belonging, but also addresses the needs that our community is saying that they need.
You wrote in an op-ed, you quoted Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they are falling in. What do you mean by that?
I think that when we look at our community as a whole, right, and not just the LGBT community, when we look at our community needs assessment, right, when we look at Nashville's, we can see that there's great need beyond just LGBTQIA plus identified folks. We have extreme poverty in this city. We have a large homeless population in this city. We have so many other issues that affect this city and this region, and people are being left behind. People are falling behind, and it is the responsibility of our organizations, and truthfully some of our and our government, to step up to the plate and say, okay, we are going to, instead of pulling people out of the water when they've fallen downstream and they're already hurting, let's create solutions before they fall in the water. Let's create solutions that prevent those issues, so that we can build bridges when they, or barriers to prevent those issues from actually happening, and giving people the support mechanisms that they need in order to truly thrive before there's crisis.
How political do you think your organization will be? A lot of what's accomplished takes money, and maybe you need to go and ask for money, or maybe you need to deal with legislation that's being passed on the state level, or push for legislation locally. How political will you be? So
we are a 501c3 organization, right? And so there is very specific limits as to what we can do as an organization. There are organizations in this state and in this and nationally that will be focused on influencing legislation. Our responsibility is to be focused on helping people, right? And so while there are certain things that a 501c3 can be involved in, voter education, voter drives, get out the vote efforts, those are things that we will be involved in, and we will help support some of those efforts, especially with organizations that are like-minded in our efforts to support our full community. But I want to leave the work of Tennessee Equality Project and other like-minded organizations to do their work wonderfully.
And let's say we can talk freely and openly here.
Sure.
And you know, people are watching and they don't understand everything, and they want to.
Right.
What is a question that the greatest misunderstanding? You know, let's say they could ask a question and you wish they would ask it, and that would elicit a response from you that would help educate people.
There's so many.
Yeah, I bet. And so I don't want to pick one. I'm kind of just copying out and throwing it to you. But what are some questions that, I guess, big misunderstandings or questions that you wish people would ask that would help help us converse about this?
I would say that if people do not understand a community, that the greatest way that they can start by understanding a community is by having conversation, right? That is the way that we are going to break down walls and barriers that might be built by someone who's saying that I don't understand you or I don't agree with you, right? The minute that we can sit down and have a conversation, we can have a cup of coffee together, or we can go for a walk. We may not even need to break bread, right? Let's just go for a walk and share conversation with one another. I can tell you my viewpoints, you can share your viewpoints. We may not necessarily agree with one another, but if we can do so with civility and with respect and with love, then I'm willing to have conversation with you and build relationship, because at the end of the day, my responsibility is to serve the community that I care for and the community that I love and the community that I'm a part of. And I'm going to do everything I can with the support of my board and the support of my community and those who affirm my lived experience and my life to make that a reality.
And have you had pushback, or what has it been all positive, or kind of what have you experienced just in the time that you've begun here?
We've had a really positive and wonderful response from the community thus far, and I think what's exciting is that we have based all of our work on deep research, right? And there's a knowing that there is all of these needs that exist, right? These are needs that have existed for a long time in our community, and so we are addressing those needs head on, right? And so when we debuted back in mid-June, the response was wonderful. And it continues to blow me away just 30 days, 40 days later, how many people have reached out and said, okay, I want to get involved. How? How can I help? How can I make this a reality?
Funding then, you're 501c3, you're not getting state, federal funding, anything like that?
We have not started that process yet. We are actually in the process of getting our 501c3 currently. We are being incubated by the Center for Collaborative Justice with Becca Stevens.
And so you're brand new.
Yeah.
And so how will Nashville be different if all goes well? What your vision for a year from now or 2 years from now? How will Nashville be different and improved by your presence 1 year or 2 years from now?
We have a very audacious vision, right? We have a very bold vision for a new Nashville. We have a vision that is going to create a sense of community, that is going to embolden and create opportunities for members of our community to thrive. And the idea for us is that not only are we going to create opportunities for collaboration within the existing organizations that work tirelessly already, but we are going to create new programming that is so desperately needed that doesn't exist today, right? So the needs that exist today for 18 to 24-year-old young adults, the needs that exist today for older adults, 50 years and older, 65 years and older, our Stonewall generation.
What is that program? What does that program look like for both those groups?
Those programs vary, but they're also very, very similar, surprisingly. There's safe and sober social activities. They could be mental health support social groups. They could be AA. They could be faith groups. They could be an outdoors group, right? It could be any number of things just to get people to be socially interacting with one another in safe manners, right? But at the same time, there are additional things that don't exist that people want. It could be as simple as a game night or a book club. I mean, simple things, but being able to do so in a safe environment.
You're talking about breaking down isolation. You're saying people, I'm certainly coming out of the pandemic, but
yep.
This community especially has felt isolated.
Absolutely.
Is that it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also these wraparound services too, right? So 18 to 24, there's a desperate need for wraparound service. It's like, how do I get plugged into affordable health care? How can I find a doctor? I've just left my foster care, or I've left my home and I don't have supportive parents, how can I get connected into the appropriate services that I need? If it's 65 plus, how can I start planning for end-of-life care? I don't have a family to fall back on. Those are the things that we have to think about. And those are the programs and services that we are deeply planning for those two specific age groups.
Let's take a call before we go to break. We put the number up there so people can call in. We have Mike here on the line. Hello, Mike.
Hey, good evening to you both. I wanted to ask the gentleman two questions. One of which is, what is your thoughts on the Supreme Court potentially overruling same-sex marriage? I also want to know your opinion on how I like your humanitarian efforts, but I don't see that much from certain members of the gay community. Also, there are certain members of the gay community here that I've spoken with friends and family members that are gay that it's not the same type of vibe like in San Francisco in the Castro district where, I've lived out there for a while. And it's just a whole different gay community, which, they're not monolithic like anybody else or like black people, but there is a difference. I don't see much of his type personality, your guest, that I would like to see more of. And do you think also is the media being very professional on how they are handling monkeypox and association with gay men? And I'll hang up and listen, and I wish you both a good night. Thank you.
Mike, thanks for your call.
Thank you.
All right, you wrote down his questions. You did a better job of writing down his questions than I did. There's several there.
Quite a few.
Yeah. And Mike, call back if we don't get them all. But okay, I'll go through whatever you wrote down.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court and same-sex marriage. My belief is that obviously, same-sex marriage, in my opinion, is law of the land, and the threats from Justice Thomas are just that at this point. And I was appreciative to see the movement from the House yesterday in the passing of the Marriage Act, and hopefully that becomes codified into law. From a personal perspective, it does alarm me, right? And I think it should alarm anyone in our community and anyone who supports our community, because it's very concerning in a lot of ways.
Okay, that answers that question.
Yeah.
All right, what about others?
Humanitarian efforts. Don't see that same for the. I hear what he's saying, and I understand that. That it stings to hear that, truthfully. But I
now repeat what he said. What
it was
stings?
Something. The way I understood it was that he doesn't see the same level of humanitarian care or the care that other he sees in other communities, right? Like he sees that I care about people. Or that it doesn't see that not in all the folks here in Middle Tennessee. It's the LGBT community, I would guess. And if I'm wrong, please forgive me, Mike.
Right.
But I think there's opportunity to create that change. And so let's work together. Track me down, Mike. And then as for monkeypox, I think that it is incumbent upon all of our health departments to take this seriously. I think it is incumbent upon our community to take it seriously and to be paying attention to all of the education that is currently available and out there. And when vaccines become available in the cities that they do become available in Nashville, we will be one of them to take advantage of that. But
yes, do you think the media is being responsible? Do you think the media is being responsible with its coverage of that?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I mean that could be true for almost anything with the media. Yeah. You're not talking about OpenLine. You're talking about all media.
Right, all
but
media.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched that topic. But Yeah, it would be yes and no. I think would be
yes and no, and I think that there's a slew of different resources that are out there that we can learn about monkeypox and do so in a way that is appropriately educating the public.
And I may not have totally understood Mike's question on that one. He mentioned San Francisco, said he doesn't see the same feeling as you might see in a San Francisco. That's not your goal, is it? I mean, we're not San Francisco here.
We are not San Francisco.
And I don't know if that is your goal, but I mean, when you hear that we're not, I don't know. I mean,
our vision at the end of the day is to create a space where everyone feels like they belong and that everyone has an opportunity to thrive, right? And so I think belonging is something that every single person wants in this life, right? And at the end of the day, if belonging is a community like the Castro, great. But if belonging for you means that you can go into a coffee shop as your full identified self and be fully appreciated and loved, that's amazing too.
How far away do you think we are from that?
Here in Middle Tennessee?
Yeah.
I think we have a long path to get there, but if people are willing to work together to make that happen, through models of collaboration, we can make it happen much quicker.
All right, so we're going to take a break. I encourage you to call in if you want to call in. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. I want to talk about your journey. You're willing to share it, which I appreciate. So we'll do that. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.